Worm's story. Drake stepped inside Worm's dark cave. Worm opened one eye. "I need to shine your scales," Drake said. He was carrying a brush, a basket, and towels. Drake looked at Worm's brown scales. "They're not shiny," he said, "but I'll clean them anyway." Drake was still getting used to being around Worm. The dragon's head was as big as Drake. Worm could swallow Drake in one gulp if he wanted to. But something about Worm made Drake feel peaceful. Drake gently brushed one of Worm's scales. The big dragon made a sound low in his throat. Worm smiled and closed his eyes. "You like that?" Drake asked. Worm made another purring sound. "Good." He cleaned Worm's scales one at a time. "I kind of miss the onion field back home," Drake said to his dragon. "It was hard work, but I loved being outside." Drake started to clean Worm's head. "And I really miss my family," Drake said. He scratched behind Worm's ears like he did with his cat back home. Then he felt his hand start tingling. He tried to take his hand off Worm, but he couldn't. It was stuck. Drake's eyes widened. He looked at Worm. The dragon was staring hard at him. Pictures popped into Drake's head. He saw the cave from his nightmare. He saw the explosion again. Before, Drake had woken up. This time, the pictures kept coming. Worm was trying to get out of the cave, but the other dragons were in the way. Then soldiers rushed into the cave. Each soldier's shirt had a gold dragon sewn on it. "The king's soldiers?" Drake asked. The soldiers wrapped Worm in chains. They dragged him out of the cave. "Owie!" Drake could hear Worm's cry. Then his hand stopped tingling. The pictures left his head. Drake looked at Worm. "Did that really happen? Did the king's men take you away from your family, just like they took me away from mine?" Worm nodded. "I'm so sorry," Drake said. He threw his arms around Worm's neck. Worm closed his eyes. All his life, Drake had looked up to King Roland. But why would the king's men treat Worm like a prisoner? Wondered Drake. Maybe he isn't such a good king after all. Chapter 11. A Noise in the Night. "Good job cleaning Worm's scales, Drake," Griffith said, walking into the cave. Drake wasn't going to say anything about what Worm had shown him. Not yet. But he did have a question for Griffith. "How did the dragons get here?" he asked. "The king's soldiers searched far and wide," Griffith replied. "It's not easy to find a dragon. Most people have never seen one. But the king did not give up. His soldiers were able to capture these 4. "But did the dragons want to come here?" Drake asked. "The king does not always think about what dragons want," Griffith said darkly. "Now come. It is time for supper." After they ate, Bo and Drake went to their room. Bo was teaching him how to write the alphabet. Bo drew a capital D and a lowercase d. "See?" Bo said. "The big D looks like a dragon with a big belly." He drew a picture on the paper. "Like Vulcan," Drake said, with a laugh. Bo laughed too. Moonlight glinted off Bo's dragonstone. It reminded Drake of something he wanted to ask Bo about. "Does your stone ever glow?" Drake asked. Bo shook his head. "No," he said. "Why do you ask?" "It's just—" "I thought I saw mine glow once," Drake said, "when I was with Worm." "That's interesting," Bo said. "You should tell Griffith." Drake nodded. "Tomorrow," he said. Drake wrote rows of the letter D before he went to sleep. He thought he would dream of D's, or maybe of Worm again. But just after he climbed into bed, thunk, Drake heard a loud noise. He sat up and saw 2 figures standing by Bo's bed. Chapter 12. A Sneaky Plan. The 2 figures turned around. It was Rory and Anna. "What do you want?" Drake asked. "Go back to sleep," Rory snapped. "Why should I?" he snapped back. Drake was tired of Rory being so bossy. "Yeah, why should he?" Bo said. "And why are you 2 here?" Anna spoke up. "We are going to bring our dragons outside while the rest of the castle is asleep. Do you guys want to come? You can bring Worm and Shoe. This is a bad idea, Bo said. No, it's not, Rory said. We're dragon masters. We should be able to take our dragons out whenever we want to. You have a point, Drake agreed. And I do think Worm would like to go outside again. Bo looked worried. What if Griffith finds out? He asked. What if the king finds out? They won't find out, Rory said, so long as neither of you say anything. She looked them both in the eyes. Well, come on then, said Anna. Drake slipped on his shoes. He followed the others down the hall. The door to Griffith's room was open. He was snoring loudly. Zzz. Rory put a finger to her lips. Shh. As they tiptoed past the door, Drake peered inside. The wizard's long beard flew up every time he snored. The dragon masters walked down the stairs. The guard in front of the training room was asleep too. That's Simon, Rory whispered. He always falls asleep. They tiptoed past Simon and into the training room. The torches were not lit, so the room was black. Rory lit a candle. Then she passed candles to each of them. Now, let's get the dragon, she said, still whispering. They reached Vulcan's cave first. Rory opened the gate. Wake up, Vulcan, she said. We're going outside. Grumbling, Vulcan got to his feet. Anna and Bo woke up their dragons. Drake went into Worm's cave. Worm, do you want to go outside? Drake asked. Worm lifted his head. His eyes shot wide open. They stared right at Drake. Drake got a strange feeling. Come on, Worm, Drake said. But Worm didn't move. He just stared at Drake. Is he trying to tell me something? Drake wondered. Rory, Anna, and Bo walked up to Worm's cave with their dragons. Is Worm coming? Rory asked. Suddenly, Drake froze. He heard words inside his head. Do not go into the tunnel.